Like you already know, I am based in South Africa right now, and I've got a passion for social ills. But not only in, talking about them, but more so in doing something about them, because one realizes that there's so much narrative around what is happening around us, and one cannot help but, feel some sort of pain and trauma, because we all, at some point in our lives, experience one of them. And I've realized through my journey that there are ways and means to overcome the social challenges that life presents us with. And that is the story of Mountains and Hills to Overcome. It is a story about my life and my mother's life. And I don't think it's that much different from stories of most women around us. It is riddled with ignorance. It is riddled with abuse by caregivers, misunderstood gender roles, divorce, marriages that seem not to work as perfectly as we hope for. It is riddled by betrayal and infidelity, by all sorts of addictions that we have suffered and witnessed. Then using religion as a means to escape from life challenges, witnessing disease, experiencing mental illness, and the list goes on. But then, most importantly, I think it is a story of hope, a story of awareness, a story of healing, a story of empowerment and prevention, a story intended to destigmatize the social ills confronting and affecting most, and just to provide a hope for a better future. I believe that parallel to telling our mostly traumatic life stories, we need to all have an obligation to also create a new narrative. And this narrative has a potential to change the current status quo for both ourselves and our young people, our youth, and I think for generations still to come. What I do as a means of sharing my life journey is visit schools, visit clinics, visit mental institutions, rehabilitation centers, to try and encourage those who are suffering trauma and help them see that that is not the end of their lives. I was actually recently challenged to contribute to a paper which addresses the strength that reduction of social challenges and economic challenges. And that gave me again a glimpse into the material and institutional infrastructure that is available in most communities that are intended to raise well-rounded human beings. But unfortunately, these institutions as well are riddled with challenges like patriarchy, abuse, and trauma for women and girls especially. And in most cases, I realized that they lack the basic capabilities to overcome the after effects. And I know that is not a new story. I know that that is a story that we hear all the time. But then, what are we doing about it? How are we raising our boys and girls in our homes? Because the family is the basic institution where people learn how to live together. And I think until we introspect and look at how we may raise better families and create, examples of family units that are resilient, we will still be faced with similar challenges. We know that, of course, there is no universal family structure, which we all wish there was, that would serve as a perfect mold. There's no, way, a manual that one can read as to how to raise children or how to be a better wife or how to be a better father. But then We also know that all these are exacerbated by challenges such as poverty, disempowerment, poor health, all which contribute to the vulnerability of families. And in most communities, we have schools, we have churches of our family students. How are we utilizing those to the benefit of our communities? How are we instilling better values that promote the probability of our children becoming better adults, and with the hope that they will experience life in ways that are better than us? Isn't it time perhaps that we look at where we have gone wrong? Isn't it time that we look at our boys as well and say, we want to raise better men in these boys that we have in our homes, as part of combating the social challenges that we are faced with? Isn't it time that we apologize to our children where we have gone wrong and try and unlearn with them all the wrongs and retrain ourselves over and over again on how to live differently? Let me share a little bit about the book. The main character in the book, who I have, as I've said before, resembles mine and my mother's story, is a woman that was raised in the same society that I've described, groomed to be an ideal wife by the standards of the day. She believed in marriage. She supported her family, neglected herself, experienced betrayal and domestic violence, witnessed disempowerment, lost her zeal for life, contemplated suicide. But then she bounced back. She reinvented herself. She improved her education. She accepted that her past needed healing and forgiveness, and realized that all faculties of herself were important: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual constructs collectively. Her voice re-emerged as a more committed individual to be of service to other people. And that is the story of my life, ladies and gentlemen. Well, there are no gentlemen in the room, my apologies. I was raised in Soweto by immigrant parents who originated from Lesotho, which is the setting of the novel. Mom was divorced when she was 38 years old, and raised all of us alone. There were challenges. We didn't have what most of our peers had growing up. But she instilled certain values in us that helped us to bounce back. Unfortunately, or fortunately, at 38 as well, I was divorced. And I just saw a trend. But then I escaped. I escaped into religion, into addictions, all sorts of them. But I also escaped physically because my job then took me to live in other countries. And I think that is where most of the reflection happened. Looking around in one of the poorest countries in the world, and realizing that we're all the same. And while I was there, traveling to some of most prominent countries in the world, and still finding that women experience similar challenges. So when I returned home, which was back in 2019, I then decided these need to be documented. These need to be written about. And I reached out to other women and said, how are you managing this? How are you dealing with this? And I think for me, that was the beginning of my healing journey. My mother is 85 years old. I'm actually in her house right now with my teenage boys. We're visiting her for the lockdown period. And just talking to her every single day, sharing tea in the morning, praying together in the evenings. I realized that sometimes You just need a tribe of women to be able to continue the healing process. It's never a done deal, because when you meet other women and you hear their stories, you realize that, you know, they still bring tears to your eyes. Just listening to some of the things that Velvet shared with us this evening brought tears to my eyes. But then those are tears of hope. Those are tears of belonging. Those are tears that say, you're not alone. And we all just keep on keeping on. And tomorrow is always brighter than where we have been before. But still on mountains and hills to overcome, we also have a second character who is Mutsewa's a husband who, in my life journey, resemble my father as well as my ex-husband. And their stories are different, because my dad succumbed to a painful death after making a sequence, a really long series of careless decisions that destroyed the family, that destroyed his entire well-being. But what was most, you know, comforting to hear was him acknowledging that he didn't know any better. Was him on his deathbed telling us that that was the best I could do with what I knew to be right at the time. So some of these challenges are not really coming from people say, I want to intentionally hurt other people. That is why grooming people from when they are young and still impressionable has become such a passion for me. And just before I close, I would like to share some of the strengths that I draw from, that help us to minimize or to prevent some of these challenges throughout our life journeys. And I know you know about the principle of Ubuntu, which emphasizes empathy, which emphasizes sharing and cooperation as an effort to resolving common problems. I find that where communities practice Ubuntu, there's always a safe net where when challenges come, people have got something to fall back on. And that increases their resilience. It increases the social capital, which are both noted as important aspects that help us bounce back to some sort of experiencing some type of trauma. And I think we all have an obligation just to incorporate those values as part of strengthening our family units, as part of strengthening our communities. One of the questions that I get asked the most is, what about the legal systems? I mean, despite many countries' adoption of constitutional democracies that support gender equality, feminist judiciaries that are intended to bring fairness to matters concerning women and girls, and a whole lot of international organizations with similar mandates, we find that the implementation process is always stifled. And the question that I ask myself then is, why are we not seeing jails? Because I'll give an example with what we experienced in South Africa during the hard lockdown. The scourge of gender-based violence increased drastically. And a lot of people were saying there needs to be quicker means to deal with the cases and put people to jail. But my question was, who raised those men who are behaving in manners like that? I also watched what happened at the Capitol Hill not so long ago. And we are very quick to say, prosecute, take to jail. But then you ask, how did people even end up to believe that it is normal to behave in ways that are unacceptable, at least to most people who are deemed to be, reasonable? So the answer for me comes back to our family units. And I think we need to do a lot of work with our youth to ensure that not only do we have policies, but we also have training and retraining and or conversations, which is what I'm trying to open with the schools in Gauteng right now, as we've realized that most of our youth do not have platforms in their homes to talk about the things that are bothering them, that affect them, to experience many kind of traumas. So to me, because I strongly believe that if they can be raised well, they can turn out to be better human beings. But then, who needs to do the work? I find that the advocacy work as well has to be done by us women, because we are the caregivers, we are the home builders. So I really wish to hold hands with all of you, my sisters, as we raise better young and women, and prayerfully leave this planet better than we found it. It cannot be that there's so many stories of pain and trauma that are told, and there's so many other possible ways to deal with what is happening around us, and we do not do it. So it is really exciting to be here. I'm happy to share my story. I'm happy to share as we continue on this common cause. Thank you very much.